Peeps, the regressive left just wants to live in constant protest. Stop making up issues. Same peeps. Literally Protestants. So this is a thought about some things going on in the United States of America. There has been ongoing protests for various reasons for quite some long time. More than just protests, outright riots and violent actions. And some of the stuff's not being covered. Some places, like in Portland, at the time of me recording this, have been going on for quite some time. This recently tried to assault and burn down. It's been, I think the federal courthouse has been under siege for a while, and they finally sent some, I think, National Guard people, and they're not like, oh, Trump is coming in, and he's a despot, which is what I expected, which is also why I was like, okay, they need to leave the chop thing to go, because if he actually sends people in, they're going to actually flip it around and blame it on him. You have places like Minnesota saying, oh, call it a state of emergency, because now we're bankrupt, we have all this money, we have to fix this place. And Trump's administration is like, no. I don't think I will. Insert that Captain America meme. So it's you have this situation, but you have people on the political left who have been protesting certain things that I am not quite in agreement of, but I at least tip my hat to the people in the United States of America who are taking that First Amendment right, who are taking that ability to actually go out there and voice your actual objections to things with actual actions. I'm saying, get off the highways. Don't block a highway because cars drive on the highway and you might get hit. I'm saying, like, find ways to do it. There's peaceful and organized ways to do these things. Some of the outright riots, whether or not I agree with what you're doing, the actual riot itself is going to actually take away and dissuade from what's actually being done. But just the right to protest, having things to protest about, that is something that I have seen about the United States of America, and I had a separate video called Snowflakes Created the West, where I was like talking about how there is that whole argumentation of just the climate itself, with the winter coming around, selected for people who had to plan in the future and think we're going to store these kind of plants in these kind of location and have this long-term kind of thing, because if we don't do it, we'll starve. And then to do that, it actually encourage people to join up and commune and create communities and work together and find better ways to do crop rotation and get better knowledge of the things and then capture animals and then make better clothing and all these things. Whereas you had certain places that were more temperate climates where you didn't have that many challenges to your general well-being. You could kind of coast along in a certain way, or you didn't have those things, these big question marks, or these known unknowns where you, a known of knowing you're not going to be able to actually get access to food. Animals are not going to be out. The water is going to be reduced because it's freezing. The cold is going to be in a certain way that's repetitive to the point where you start wondering, okay, what's going on in the seasons? What's going on in this and this? Those things kind of made you plant things and made you more sensitive to your environment and different changes in the environment, and made a lot more steps to actually counter that environment. Now, further on, I was talking about the snowflakes itself, where in the United States of America, people in general expect a comfort of life at 90. That's what they expect to begin with. So if they drop down a 5-point drop to 85, that is something they're like, wow, that's a massive drop for me because I'm not used to being at 85. I'm used to just coasting around at 90. You have a place, so they'll complain more about that, whereas you have a place in some developing countries, even if you just look at the place like China, and some people wonder, why are people in mainland China seemingly so complacent with some of the things going on? But you have to think of what happened with the Great Leap Forward. They came out from just basic poverty, just the few actual capitalists, free marketization of the actual communist economy that they had in China has lifted people up from such a low level where people were expecting, in general, they were just at a 20 or something level of quality of life compared to just the basic quality of life that I'm talking about back in those times when snow was still developing, humans coming out of the Stone Age, Bronze Age type of times. They were living pretty much close to that, pretty much close to just being out in the boons without any contact of any actual civilization. So that's the basic level. That's just the basic animal level. That's talking about the 10, single digits. That's where humans have been. So they were lifted from that to maybe around 25, to getting some electricity, getting some roads, getting some access to medicine. So for them, now they're used to living at the 35, but in living memory, majority of them have been living in those 20s and things like that. So now you get to move to a city, even to the outskirts, you're in 35s, you're in 40s sometimes. So even if you go up to 60 someday, like, wow, that's super, super exciting. So even if you're being kept at that 60, which is so much lower than an American would take to be something that they accept, it's still something that they wouldn't protest about because they're used to, their expectations are so much lower. But when you talk about this thing in the United States of America, people talking about the protesters, yes, let them protest. But I'm also asking people, if you object to what they're doing, because some of these people are taking these things too far, don't just say you have nothing to protest about and not say anything. Counter them, talk to them, use that freedom of speech and talk to them and say, look, maybe you're wrong about this. Maybe the things you're talking about, there's better ways to go about this. But also realize a lot of people in the United States of America are Protestants. There are a lot of the there's Catholics, but there's a lot of Christian people from the Protestants. And when that came to be, the Catholic Church was established. There were things about the Catholic Church that Martin Luther and other Protestants didn't like, and then they went on and protested that, and then they broke up from the actual Catholic Church because they disagreed with certain tenets about it. They didn't hate Christianity in and of itself. And maybe some of these people on the political left, they don't hate liberty. They don't hate what you might think the United States of America is founded on. Because they're technically not just leaving. I mean, they're not just being out. It's not like, hey, we're Protestants and we're just going to like put this thing on your door and then we're going to go to Islam. We're going to go found another religion. It's like, no, we're still going to found something based on that same Bible. So try to make a case for that Constitution. Try to make a case for those Bill of Rights. Try to make a case for what the basics of the United States of America are, and try to engage some of these people. I suggest you start with just engaging people you consider friends, people you consider in your circles, and just talk about the ideas. Even if you think you agree on things, just talking about and trying to voice some of these things out gets you in a different way where you're able to actually be more conversant and understand why you believe the things that you believe, why you stand for the things that you stand for. So if you do come into a point where you're actually talking to somebody who is against something else, you might be able to communicate with that person due to having practice of talking it out with your actual friends. It's something to do. There's so many sources online where you can go and you can see videos that people post. I would appreciate if you use my video as one of it. If you listen to this and you feel, oh, sometimes you don't engage. Use that advantage. Look at how many other places in the world that freedom of speech is not something that's taken for granted. It's something that's being taken away from people. You know, people are like, oh, this guy's limiting me, this guy's doing this. And right now, I think part of what Americans really value with this so much is people seem to be afraid of not speaking because their jobs or something will be taken away, they'll be held. But freedom of speech is not freedom of consequences from actually saying those things. There still are consequences, but there's also consequences for not speaking. What is actually there to risk? What is there to actually gain? And that's a consideration I make, and I understand I'm in different situations than a lot of people, but one question I ask you that I see a lot of other people asking as well right now is if you choose to just be quiet and not speak right now because you think there's something in your life you're doing that is at risk if you speak up now, what about the underlying thing that important thing right now relies on? Will that still exist for the foreseen future if you don't come out and say something now? When still just words and things like that can actually counter what's happening. So that's just some thoughts. This is just something that I'm seeing with some hypocrisy or some kind of cognitive dissonance, where you have some people who are more theistic and traditional, specifically in the Protestant religion, politically right, who look at people on the political left and say they protest about too much. But then there might be some Catholics who look at what Martin Luther was doing and is like, you protest too much. This whole system that we have here with the tithes and all of that, no, we think it's okay. Or we think there's better ways to do this. You don't have to actually nail something on the door of the Vatican. Why don't you just sit down and have a conversation instead of getting all like up in arms about this? Let's not have these multiple wars over these things. But that has happened in religions, that has happened in ideologies, and that will still happen. All wars have been, will be, and are cultural. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I encourage you to engage, as right now, I think one of the positives of the West is these wars can be waged with words and ideas without it having to be actually a hot war with bullets flying. We can stick in this. Yes, there's contingencies, there's other things that go off from this because ideas lead to actions, and then those actions lead to deaths. And there's many things we can talk about. Like you look at something that's happening with the pandemic, with the different shutdowns and things like that. When you talk about that, yes, you say if we open the schools, if we have this kind of situation, this certain group of people might get the disease. But then if you have these amenities closed, these people don't have the facilities to actually get this, then the kids are not being picked out by people who might have identified them getting an abuse. Then you get some kids might be dying more in this place. Or you shut down the hospitals, people are like, okay, we need to shut down the hospitals and just focus on just getting the people who have this virus. And then at the same point, there's some people who might have been going in for other procedures to find other things and like, oh, I'm not going to go in because it's shut down. It's only focused for just these people with the virus, or I might catch the virus. And then they don't go in, that thing doesn't get caught, and then they end up dying. So what I'm just trying to say is thoughts and ideas lead to actions, and those actions have an effect. So either sharing them or not sharing certain thoughts does have an actual effect. I'm an individualist, but we don't just live in this detached universe from everybody else. Even if you choose not to speak, not to protest, that is an action that does have an actual effect. So that's it for now. Till next time, I appreciate you taking your time to listen to this. I am trying to be specific. I'm not trying to make anyone take offense to this. I posted a recent video and somebody took issue to the cover that I had. It was the cowardice and Magaland thing. I'm like, oh, you're calling people cowards? I'm not calling people cowards. I am trying to understand why certain people have chosen not to speak. I'm trying to understand, am I wrong in thinking that the threat is big enough that I should be speaking? Should I just go back and be part of the silent majority and then just follow what the people are saying I should follow so I can get regular employment or be more PC and be more marketable that people think is marketable? I don't think that's marketable. I don't think that's going to win out. I think these things are actually harmful to the general society. The positive things I think are coming out of society. But let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if I doth protest too much about you not protesting about the people who are protesting. Yeah, goodbye.